Evening, everyone, and welcome to the TNT pre-show for season 3. This is the finale of the year, so we're here at episode 8. This is your opportunity to check your audio and check your video. Pour yourself a glass of champagne for this wonderful celebratory evening and maybe have a mandarin orange. Things are opening up in British Columbia, across Canada, and around the world. So it's a wonderful time. So we're going to go to full screen for our TNT commercial. Thank you, Justine. Wonderful. So I would encourage everyone to consider becoming a member of the museum. Individual memberships are $75 and dual memberships are $100. So a couple items from the shop that we want to advertised during the pre-show. A recent publication from Douglas and McIntyre, One Man and His Time, a memoir, Michael Audain, available in our shop, a rather audacious life history. And I would encourage everyone to buy them because they are flying off the shelves at $36.95. A wonderful read. Thank you, Paige. And secondly, we would be remiss if we didn't advertise our wonderful new TNT t-shirts with all the guests in true rock concert fashion, starting with season 1's first guest, Ian Wallace, and ending with our guest this evening, and many highlights along the way. 100% cotton, $25. I think they're also suitable for framing. Maybe I'll do that. Cut off the sleeves. Thank you. Okay, so we'll go back to a tiny screen. So it's a wonderful March 1st. A little inclement weather here in Whistler today, raining off and on, but glimpses of sunshine every so often. So the museum is open Thursday to Sunday, 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. Currently, visitors can walk through the permanent collection. We have 9 galleries here of a wonderful selection of carvings, paintings, and photographs that arc over 200 years of art in British Columbia. And in our upper gallery, we now have a micro show while we're in changeover in our special exhibition area. And the micro show is called Critiques of the Real, and it's a selection of photo-based works from our permanent collection. So always something wonderful happening here at the Audain Art Museum. In just a few seconds, I see 15 seconds before the top of the hour, and we will go live shortly thereafter. And it's nice to be wrapping up yet another successful season of TNT and looking forward to thinking about season 4. Okay, so we're gonna go live. Here we go. Welcome to Tuesday Night Talks, season 3, episode 8. This is the season finale. Woo! Season finale. Okay, and we want to thank Susan Roop, our sponsor of TNT season 3. We have 2 very incredible events coming up here at the Audain Art Museum. A new exhibition called Wolves, the Art of Dempsey Bob, that opens to the public on April 2nd. And this is the most comprehensive exhibition of Dempsey Bob's work ever mounted. And then secondly, our annual fundraiser, the Illuminate Gala and Auction, that is being held at the Fairmount Chateau Whistler on April 23rd. Tickets are on sale now. Go to audainartmuseum.com. Life here is great in British Columbia, and I would encourage everyone to stay safe and be nice. Tonight, we're back in the middle gallery of the permanent collection here at the Audain Art Museum in Whistler on the shared territories of the Lillooet and Squamish nations. And as always, we're by the mysterious flashlight's glow. Tonight, we've set a new TNT record with over 650 people registered. So what a wonderful way to wind up season 3. So now we go live to his den in Vancouver. Welcome, Michael Audain.
Curtis, good evening.
Wonderful to have you here. I've been looking forward to this talk all week. Just as a bit of a preface to the talk, we're going to talk about selected works in the Audain Art Museum's holding that have been generously donated by yourself, Michael, and Yoshi Karasawa. Really, the strength of this collection being carvings, paintings, and photographs. So, Michael, let's perhaps we can just jump right into the broadcast with the first piece. This is 2 figures of Salish origin, circa 1900, wood and pigment. Perhaps you can begin with how you came upon this piece, Michael, and how you'd like to discuss it with our viewers.
Well, first, let me thank you for the opportunity to talk to our public. The works of art that I've selected tonight are by no means my favorite works of art, but in the museum, because frankly, they're all my favorites, or otherwise I wouldn't have donated them. But I thought that just to show the variety of work that we have in Whistler, I thought it'd be interesting to select a small number to talk about. And I think it's appropriate that we start with this one because our museum is on the land of the Salish speaking people in Lower British Columbia, today's British Columbia. And this is a very rare work of Salish art, historic Salish art. We don't exactly know how old it is, but it's probably well over 100 years old, maybe 150 years old. It's a very delicate carving of probably maple wood. And you can see right away, if you're knowledgeable about the art that's been made on this northwest coast for thousands of years, that this is a Salish work. You can tell by the face and the type of carving. So we don't know exactly the purpose of the work, but it may have been the top of a staff, a ceremonial staff, perhaps. But the figure on the top is obviously the dominant figure. He holds a head actually in one of his hands. The other one looks like it's been lost or cut off. And underneath is, according to authorities like the late Bill McLennan, he said the figure underneath is perhaps a slave. And also there's 2 fissures indicated. Fissures being small carnivorous animals that live in the forest of Western Canada and the Northwest Coast, and they have a spiritual significance. But we don't know, really, we don't know everything about this work, but it's a very special, rare work. I've only seen one similar, and that was in the on Park Avenue in New York City, in the apartment of a very famous collector of what he called American Native American art, and so when I saw this, I knew what it was, and I had some idea of how rare it was.
Now, when you indicate that it is of Salish origin, is part of that determined by the way in which the brow is rendered and the very straight nose? And is that a defining feature?
I believe so, but you mustn't quote me as an expert on anything that we're going to talk about tonight. I've never taken a course in art, history, or any other type of art in my life. I'm just a student, and but I could immediately spot how important this work is once you've seen, and there's not a number of works, and there's not too many of this age and quality.
Now, this piece is approximately, about 1.5 feet high. And one thing that really defines the difference between the two figures is the lower figure is wearing what appears to be a tunic, while the upper figure is unclothed. Does that speak to their status at all, Michael, do you think?
I believe so. Bill, that's perhaps why Bill McLennan indicated that the lower figure is clothed. He said that the lower figure is not necessarily a woman, just a somewhat inferior figure to the one on top. And but as I say, this is typical of works that deserve a lot more research. We like to see it at the entry to the museum, because we are on the land in Whistler of the Squamish and Lillooet Nation, the Salish-speaking people, and we think that Salish art should welcome them to the museum.
And that's a very good point. We are in the process of formulating a historic Indigenous art policy, and a central piece in that will be really digging into all the historic Indigenous works, and getting an opinion and more research on these things. One other really interesting feature, and I was wondering if you had seen this in any other instances, is the use of single beads for the eyes of both figures.
Yes, I've noticed that, and I think that would obviously indicate a 19th century or even very early 20th century origin. So it wouldn't, it's obviously not a figure of, say, 200 years old. It's probably about a century or so old.
Okay. Next, we're going to move to a circa 1840 piece, an articulated mask that comes to us in terms of origin, Nuu-chah-nulth peoples on Vancouver Island. And Michael, perhaps you can describe some of the defining features of this very unique piece.
This is a Nuu-chah-nulth mask. They are the people who from early times have lived on the west coast of Vancouver Island. And it's again, it's a fairly rare work, probably early 19th century. Interestingly, it's articulated so that when worn, the mouth can sort of move up and down. It can go clack, clack, clack. The interesting thing about this, and this is one of the very few works that my wife and I acquired in British Columbia. Most of the work that we've acquired was being collected in the eastern United States or in Europe, which we brought back to the coast. But this maquette came up for sale in a local auction in Vancouver, and it was obviously of interest, and you can see it has a certain amount of beauty with the natural paints and that sort of thing. And we didn't know a lot about it. We couldn't figure out at all what the sort of decoration on top. It looked like a crown to me, and so it wasn't until a friend of ours, a late friend of ours, an artist called Bo Dick, was visiting us one day. And when Bo saw this in my den, he said, "Oh, you have this this mask," and he told us that the figure, the arrangement on top is a fish trap. He also told us that the mask was woman's mask. It was designed to be worn by women. And being a very knowledgeable chap, because Beau, although he was sort of from the Wakawak area of Vancouver Island, he had traveled extensively on the coast. And he added, when he first saw it, he said, you know, the rattle that's supposed to go with this mask is in the Museum of Natural History in New York City. So that was all a surprise to us, but it was a very, very helpful way for us to learn and identify the origin of this spectacular artwork, and also obviously at some time or another it was a ceremonial object.
And that rattle that you make reference to, is that the type of rattle where it's shaped like a cage with small salmon that?
Yes, indeed it is. And if you want to be a little bit more precise, Beau seemed to think it would possibly come from the Clayoquot area of the coast, that clan, from that particular clan of the New Chalmers speaking people. And so we're very happy we were very happy to have this mask, which is now in your museum in Whistler. And again, I think it could benefit from more research, and it'd be interesting to know what its history is and where it's traveled during its lifetime, going through the hands of different collectors, I imagine.
Oh, very much so. And the next piece that we're going to speak on, in fact, we do have a very thorough history. This was originally in the collection of Reverend Dundas, and it's a Bentwood chest of Tsimshian origin from circa 1840. And perhaps you can discuss some of the outstanding features of this chest, Michael.
Well, this is a really marvelous chest used for storing ceremonial robes and objects. It's a real tour de force as an artistic accomplishment, and you don't see too many of them, which are both being carved. The carving is very, very delicate, and also painted. And you can see some of the original paint that the sort of bluish color that's still on the mask, and a bit of red there. Both the back and the front of the box are equally well executed, and then the two ends are painted and not carved. I've seen a great many chests of this type in American and European museums and collections, but I have to tell you that I have not seen one that I would have preferred to have collected rather than this one. This is a superb quality, and even though it's aged, it's had hasn't been always well looked after. But the top and bottom of the mask were at some time in its history replaced, but the sides, all sides, are still in excellent condition. And looking at some of the slight damage at the bottom of the mask, where it was stored in this castle in Scotland for over 100 years, I suspect at one time or another it was sort of banged up by a vacuum cleaner, or Hoover, as they call them in England, because you can see the marks on the bottom of the box. It wasn't probably respected enough, but as I say, it's a superb piece of Tsimshian work. The Tsimshian people, for those who don't know, are the ones who live sort of east of, traditionally east of Prince Rupert, up the lower part of the Skeena River. They have a a wide territory, and they're well known for their prowess in carving. The creature that's sort of carved on the side we're looking at is, according to authorities I've talked to, is some sort of perhaps mythical sea creature who has sort of been disaggregated as is the tradition in Northwest Coast. But you can see the strong form lines. You can see the traditional ovoids and U shapes of traditional in Northwest Coast carving. And so anyway, I think we're very lucky to have such a marvelous work in our collection at this time.
I would agree with you, and the depth of the carving and the fine detail of the graphic nature of the painting makes this one of the more outstanding pieces in the historic part of the museum's collection. Next, we'll turn to perhaps one of the museum's best represented artists, and that's Emily Carr. And we have a piece here that's an oil on canvas from 1942 entitled Quiet. What drew you to this piece, Michael?
Well, what drew me, Curtis, is as a young boy, I spent a long time quite often in the dark and dense forest of the west coast of Vancouver Island. And of course, Emily Carr has a tremendous reputation. We're lucky as a museum to have one of the 2 or 3 finest collections of her work in Canada, well, I suppose in the world. So I think we must have about well over 30 works, I believe. But this one is particularly important in her life because it's one of the 4 last large oil paintings that she painted in 1942, shortly before her death. A couple of years later, she was incapacitated after painting this and unable to go out into the forest and the woods where she loved to go. She did some sketches in Beacon Hill Park, actually, which resulted in this work. I think it's a marvelous work which sort of draws the eye to both the darkness of the forest, yet you'll see down in the left-hand corner the rejuvenation of a young tree coming up in a glade of sunlight there, and that's what the forest is all about. It's about decay, but also rejuvenation and quiet. You can imagine why she used that title. Was it to do with the day that she visited this part of the forest, or was it because she felt her days were coming to an end? So it's again it's a painting that meant a lot to Yoshi and I. We have more exciting and more glamorous works, you might say, from Emily Carr, but I just felt that as someone who is respected as a great painter of the forest, this is a fitting tribute to her that we're fortunate to have and be able to share with our public.
Yes, and I would agree at this point in her career, in her early writings, she indicates her struggle in showing the immensity of the forests of British Columbia, but also that quality of light in the forest. And she also very effectively develops quite a deft, you could say, way of summarizing tree forms in this work as well.
You can see, Curtis, that she had a deep affection for the forest. And I think that is still shared by many of us today. We are concerned about that there will be sufficient old growth forest for our grandchildren. In my case, my great grandchildren, because I'm fortunate to have one, that they can visit these marvelous. I think we have a place on Vancouver Island called the Cathedral Grove, and I think the feeling I get when I go into that forest is just, if not more thrilling than I would get in going to the finest Gothic cathedrals in Europe.
I would tend to agree that they're both equally valuable cultural experiences. So before we get into the Q&A, we have one last historic piece that we'll talk about, and that's by F.H. Varley, who was a member of the Group of Seven. And this piece is a little closer to home for you in terms of its location. It's called Dusk Tantalus Range. It's an oil on panel of circa 1929. And again, what are some of the outstanding qualities in this work for you, Michael? And it's quite a small jewel-like painting.
It is a small work, but it's you know, I felt that we should probably try to have one or two groups of seven, because if we don't have one, we'll be asked, do we have any group of seven works in our museum? So we have work from the two members of the group who lived in British Columbia, being Fred Varley and Lauren Harris. Others came and stayed for a while too, but this one I just felt is a spectacular small work. It was painted at a time that Varley was living at Point Grey, so he's looking across the water to the North Shore. Then beyond the North Shore, you can see the mountains of the Tantalus range. And of course, it was in those mountains that Varley and MacDonald and loved to roam, particularly Varley, spent a lot of time there. He was a real outdoors man, according to Ian Tom, who has written extensively about members of the group in British Columbia. And of course, you wonder about the background. Was that, you presume it was at maybe the summer solstice with the sun setting high beyond those mountains, or alternatively, given the green I see in the sky, I'm wondering if it was on a rare night when you could actually see the northern lights, or maybe it was just Varley thinking that it'd be nice to see the northern lights, and using a technique there, which actually has some reference to Chinese art. It has some Chinese relevance, again, according to Ian Tom, my authority. And Ian, of course, had written a marvelous book called the Masterpieces in the Audain Art Museum. And Ian was a great advisor to me for many years on acquiring art, and I learned a tremendous lot from Ian Tom. So, but anyway, we do have a group of seven painting in the museum. The other one, as you know, Curtis, Lauren Harris, a wonderful Lauren Harris we have, is out on loan for quite a long time. I think it's touring somewhere in the United States.
That's correct. It's a Lauren Harris. It's an exhibition organized by the Crocker Museum that is touring through the southwest of the United States over the next couple years. Any closing remarks on this F.H. Varley in terms of how it rates versus other Group of Seven works?
Well, I am not at all an expert on the group of 7. Some of us call us the group of Toronto, and but I couldn't tell you. All I know, it's certainly caught Yoshi and my eye, and we're very happy to have it in our home for a short period of time before it went to the museum.
And we're very grateful to have it here. And this work, as well as the previous works, all demand closer inspection. So I would encourage everyone to come and experience our permanent collection. So now, Michael, will move into the question and answer portion of the program. And the first question comes from Mira from East Vancouver. And she asks, as a collector, can you describe what it means for a work of art to speak to you?
Well, I think works of art do speak to you in a sort of non-verbal way, because from what I understand, most artists are creating works to communicate with the public. So they are interested. It is a form of communication. So it should make an impression on us, and certainly I feel that with certain works of art right away, I feel a connection. Others, frankly, I don't. And the reason is we all bring our own background, our own experience and prejudices to when we look at art, and so we enjoy it in different ways, and different people enjoy different works, and that's wonderful. You're not supposed to, or you don't have to enjoy every work of art you see on the wall of a museum. I encourage people to be very picky, and I always ask them which ones did you really turn to, which ones did you really get turned on by. So I think it's a legitimate thing.
Okay, thank you. And now Susan from Vashon, Washington asks, did you have any experiences as a young person that created your love of art?
Yes, I grew up in a town that didn't have a public art gallery. I grew up in a house that frankly didn't have any art in it. But I had one wonderful experience. Was at a very young age, or perhaps about 10, 11, I started going on Saturday mornings to the Royal BC Museum in Victoria. And I went the first place to view objects of the animal world and natural history, and we've shown films of that sort of thing. But I very soon started to be able to spend time with the wonderful collections of Northwest Coast art, the art that's been made on this coast for thousands of years. And that must have, that caught my eye and must have had an impression on me at an early age. So that was the type of art that I was introduced to. That's frankly the type of art that I can remember best in my early days, and then it was only later in my late teenage years that I started to have an opportunity to look at other art, and particularly as I had opportunity to travel and visit museums over time in the Europe and in the Eastern United States, and of course our wonderful National Gallery in Ottawa was and the Vancouver Art Gallery. These were all my mentors in becoming exposed to art. But I think because of my own experience, it's terribly important for children to have an experience and be exposed to art, just like it's important to expose them to good music and other forms of theater, dance, anything of that nature that you can expose them to. And I often tell my friends, take your young children, and if they don't, just drag them if necessary, at least once to Art Museum, and maybe they'll remember something. And for some of them, it will be a formative experience. Others, that's fine too. They can go on and enjoy other things.
Wonderful. That's a great insight. The next question is a very curious one, and it comes from Dana in Vancouver. Has art ever made you cry?
Oh my goodness, that's a that is a tough question. I'd have to think long and hard and go back many years to get the answer, because I'm not someone who easily cries. But I can tell you that there was I do recall a day in our museum in Whistler, Curtis. It was when the Jim Hart and his came down, Chief Jim Hart, the carver of our famous dance screen, 16-foot long dance screen, came down with a group of his colleagues from Haida Gwaii, who had worked on, many of who had worked on this amazing screen that took him 2 or 3 years to produce, when they danced it the first time. And I was just so excited. I was involved with the screen in terms of commissioning it from the beginning, and to see it being danced by his family and people from the village of Masset, and to think it was a terribly exciting moment in my life, which was slightly crushed when he urged me to get up and dance too, and that was a shock. So I bravely had to do that. But I can tell you, it was a extremely emotional time for me. And as I say, I'm usually don't get too excited about things, but I did that evening.
I must admit, Michael, that was definitely one of the highlights of my curatorial career in terms of being around Jim and his family and the dancers during that magnificent dancing in of the screen. So the last question comes from Martine in Vancouver. And again, this is very curious. Are there any similarities between Jean-Paul Riopelle and Bill Reid?
Oh my goodness, that's a tough question. I think Martine knows that we are collectors of the work of the great Canadian artist Jean-Paul Riopelle. You'll see one actually right behind me, and we love his work in the same way that we greatly respect the work of the Haida master Bill Reid. I'm not exactly sure. I haven't really thought of it. I'd have to think a lot about it. But obviously, they were both great Canadian artists. They were strong people who took risks in their career. They were always challenging themselves, and I'm talking about them now like I knew them both. I know them mainly through their art. I did have the good fortune to meet and chat with Bill Reid on several occasions, but Jean-Paul Riopelle I've only known through his art, but I figure I know him pretty well. We know the family, and we live with the art, so I do feel a lot of affinity for both of them. I think they're just marvelous artists. Interestingly, Jean-Paul Riopelle did have an interest in Northwest Coast art. When he was a young man, he went to France and met with the group called the Surrealists in the 1940s. And one of the first things they asked him when he came from Canada about his views on Northwest Coast art, because they were very interested in Northwest Coast art, and for a number of reasons, philosophically, and Riopelle didn't really. They were shocked he didn't know much about it, so they gave him a mask that he kept for many years. And when I look at pictures of his studio, I see certain Northwest Coast works, and he obviously respected the art, this amazing art we have on this coast. So that's about on the face of it. I can't answer any more than that question, but it's an unusual question to ask, because even though they were alive together and made a huge contribution, not only to the history of Canadian art, but I think the history of world art, because it is just I hadn't really compared the two, even though I greatly admire and respect both artists.
Having just closed a major Riopelle exhibition from the Montreal Museum of Fine Arts, it was a great thrill for us at the museum to have that work here and really treat our visitors. So in this second part of the broadcast, we're going to address a selection of works by artists that you have actually got to know over the course of your lifetime. And the first piece is the one situated just behind me by Tony Onley, called Juno, and it's a collage on canvas of 1962. And perhaps you can describe what fascinated you about this work, and any little insight onto Tony's career that you were able to gain.
I don't know how well nowadays people would know Tony Onley. He was an Englishman. He wouldn't describe himself as an Englishman, probably a Manx man. He came from the Isle of Man, and he came to Vancouver, and he was one of in the 1950s and early 60s. He was one of our leading artists, and he came to my attention because of his collages. I saw an artwork in the home of one of my professors when I was at UBC, and it was a collage, and they told me it was by a BC artist called Tony Onley. I said, that's fascinating. I'd love to have one, until I found out the price, which was something like $450 when I had a limit of $25 at that time in buying a work of art. But later on, Yoshi and I got to know Tony and his wonderful wife, and we had a chance to acquire this work, which was done in 1962, and it was actually sold to the Canadian Art Bank, which was based in Ottawa, of course, and bought up a lot of artwork at the time. And it so happened that artists had the right always to buy their work back from the art bank at the price that the art bank paid them for it originally. So 40 years later, Tony bought this work, and I saw it in their dining room one day, and he saw me staring intently at it. Being quite a good salesman, who liked to avoid dealers, he asked me, he said, Michael, would you and Yoshi like this work? And of course, I said yes, and we were able to negotiate a satisfactory price, which was much more than I could have bought it for, I guess, in the early 1960s. But we're very very happy with it, and I think it's a superb use of collage. It's strong. It's so simple. He called it Juno because Juno is the I guess the Roman goddess, the wife of Saturn, and was particularly known, I think, for her power. So this is a powerful collage, and I think it's reads very well, and we enjoyed it in our home for a good many years.
And from this very elegant and simple work, we'll now move to a piece by E.J. Hughes entitled Departure from Nanaimo, an oil on canvas of 1964. And I know you have a very personal connection to some of the elements within this representation of a common scene on the coast.
Yes, of course. I think I should mention that our museum has probably the most important, well, certainly the most important Hughes collection, and I notice when I go through the museum how many of our visitors, particularly our older, our British Columbia visitors, how delighted they are with the Hughes collection. To me, this artwork has strong sentimental value because I forget the name of the title, but it has to do with the leaving leaving Nanaimo, and that's the old CPR ferry, the Princess Victoria, and you can see the ferries in those days were not double enders like our BC ferries are today. So the ferry had to back out, and you can see the wash in front of the bow. But to me, the personal connection was my first morning on the BC coast on July 20th in 1947. The day I arrived in Vancouver was 2 hours later, we embarked on the Princess Victoria to take the ferry to Victoria from Vancouver. And that was the start of a whole new life for me. And it's been a wonderful life. So I have a very fond memory of that particular vessel, which was originally built in 1902 on the Clyde in Scotland. And so I think Hughes' maritime paintings, and particularly his ones of the ferries, are amongst his most cherished, and certainly I feel that way.
Yes, and I can attest that the E.J. Hughes room is perhaps the most nostalgic experience for people from BC as they witness E.J.'s rendering of scenes from around the island and up and down the coast, and the brilliant way in which he's able to capture different effects on the water. The next piece we'll turn to is a bronze by Bill Reid, Killer Whale of 1984. And this is a bronze that Vancouverites, or an image that Vancouverites will know well. Can you speak to what attracted you to this wonderful bronze?
Well, what attracted me, Curtis, and I think what attracts everyone to the creature that it depicts is the power. Look at the power of the creature, and with the high dorsal fin and the movement, and think of the power of the artist to create such a work. As you know, it was originally done in a much larger edition for the Vancouver Aquarium, which I believe the bronze is still sits today, and this is quite a bit smaller model, but it still exhibits great power, and you'll see, of course, the Hyder form line and carved into the bronze, and just a spectacular sculpture. Bill Reid, of course, was a master sculptor, and he, like all masters, like Charles Edenshaw before him, and some other masters, he had the gift of being able to design in the 3-dimension. He could really visualize what something would be like in a without necessarily doing a full model. He just from sketches he could figure it out, and I think it is a great celebration of naturalistic design, and it is as Ian Tom called it in his book, a most significant contribution to the art of sculpture, and so I think our museum is really lucky to have one of these bronze castings.
I would agree, and the isolating this killer whale and rendering it, as you said, in a very powerful fashion, definitely moves the traditions of art making among the Haida forward. The last piece that we're going to speak about this evening is by an artist that I know is very near and dear to both you and Yoshi. This is a work by Gordon Smith entitled Winterscape, an acrylic on canvas of 1991. Perhaps you can begin with just a discussion of his very rigorous use of paint.
I will say something about that, but I would like to acknowledge first that we're looking at the work of I think it's fair to say British Columbia's most loved artist, just in personal terms, not necessarily the quality of his art, because we have many marvelous artists. But Yoshi and I have never known anyone in our lives who had more real friends than Gordon Smith, and of course his wife Marion, who we knew for a great many years. This is a very special painting by Gordon. So he told me, because it was a little different from the style of it he developed a year or two later, which was more representational. Gordon had, being an art teacher and at the same time a great student of art, the art of the day, he had many artistic styles in his lifetime. But according to authorities like Doris Shadbolt, it was really after he retired from teaching at UBC that he came into his own, and he started to depict the West Coast landscape, particularly not the deep forests of Emily Carr, but the more or less significant verges of the forest, the connection between the forest and the trails and the road and the undergrowth, the underpinnings of the forest. And but here he's those paintings are greatly prized, and as many types of his work. But this one is as you can see, it's a bit more abstract, and what he's doing there is really depicting, not just representing, but depicting how he feels about the forest in winter. And I remember when Yoshi and I saw it in a Granville Street gallery. It took us 10 seconds to say that we must, whatever happens, we must have that painting, and it was and we both loved it very much.
And would you say that, how would you compare Gordon Smith's effort, particularly works that are highly abstract such as this, with that of the work of Les Automatistes?
So I think that this particular work has a great similarity to some of the works I love of Jean-Paul Riopelle. One thing they both shared was using a lot of paint with great abandon, and I think this particular painting also shows a lot of power and energy went into it, just like Riopelle's work in the early 1950s, and of course I love Riopelle's work also. So it's again it's a real masterpiece. This, and Gordon would come to our house quite often, but when he saw this painting, which was always in our living room, he'd say, "Oh, Michael, it's too bad I can't do one like that again," because he became more representational, which is fine. All great artists move on. They don't just keep doing one thing. They keep experimenting and pushing themselves. Gordon was certainly a great artist in that respect. And of course, also he had a huge influence on his students in the school systems and elsewhere. He was a great inspiration to the young people of British Columbia, and we all miss him. And Marion, we miss them both a great deal.
Yes, I would agree. A very instrumental figure on the BC art scene for many decades, and this is one of a number of pieces that visitors to the museum can happily witness. Well, Michael, I want to thank you and Yoshi for such a wonderful gift in the form of the collection and this building. I also want to thank Susan Roop for her patronage of season 3 of TNT. I'd like to thank our founders and trustees, our staff and volunteers, as the museum is poised to really move forward in a big way this spring. Over these past 3 seasons, I'm greatly indebted to our TNT crew, our director, producer, Justine Nickel, our quality control coordinator, Paige Keith. I also always like to thank our members and you, the viewer. And just a reminder, as I mentioned at the top of the broadcast, 2 major events coming up very soon. The opening of Wolves, the Art of Dempsey Bob, a major retrospective of this masterful carver that opens here on April 2nd to the public, as well as our annual Illuminate Gala and Auction on April 23rd at the Fairmont Whistler, and tickets are on sale now. And as always, I want to close out season 3 of TNT. That is a tribute to my parents, Anne and Roy Collins, from Cornwall, Ontario. Hi to my little sister, Susie, who stayed up late for 8 weeks in a row in Canada, Ontario. And just a little shout out to my buddies, Guy and Andre, who are here skiing with me at the Callahan this week. Michael, would you like to acknowledge anyone before we leave?
Well, I just want to thank my family if they're listening to me, and they've had to live with that art when they were young, many of them, and so they are big supporters of the museum today, and I hope they will continue to do that. And I wish everyone a very happy recovery from the pandemic and a wonderful spring ahead.
Well, thank you, and good night, Michael, from the Torchlight's Glow. Take care.